Everybody, this is Steve Colescott for elitefts. We're doing another segment of Video Inquisitions with Eric Maroscher. And Eric, Oscar Wilde once wrote that life is not complex, we are complex. Life is simple, and the simple thing is the right thing. You know, you've got a knack for kind of simplifying things like training, and your training, it's kind of it seems to me is a hybrid of West Side conjugate training and some of the things that the Ernie France training method. Can you tell us a little bit describe how you managed to mix these two styles together into your own?
Wow, I'm following an Oscar Wilde quote from Steve Colescott. This is tough. How can I simplify it? To simplify it, I would say that for us, one size does not fit all. You know, not every guy is going to wear the same tuxedo to the prom. How's that? We have lifters, like you mentioned the West Side method, for example. That is a gym of elite lifters, like your top of the top. In some cases, best they've ever been in their weight class lifter. I think at most powerlifting gyms, you've got a hodgepodge of different lifters. You've got some lifters that are going to be elite athletes. Some could be the best, like ever, in a Ed Cohen kind of sense of the word. But you're also going to have people that is their passion, but maybe just genetically that's not what they're really suited to do. And there's a lot of different training methods, and I think there's merit to all. And what we really try to do really is just pick what part of each of those things works specifically with the deficits that the lifter we're dealing with has. So for example, with some of our lifters, the Franz method works great for their deadlift. As it described in the 10 Commandments of Powerlifting in the Ernie Franz book. And for some lifters, they respond more to the West Side conjugate method for their deadlift. So part of that equation is that, when you're dealing not with widgets but with actual people, what they believe works for them sometimes works for them. You've got those kind of variables as well. So we have lifters that train West Side completely and fully. We have some that do the West Side movements, but it's not so much exact with percentages, and then some that do a Franz method, and some that just do different kinds of periodization methods. So it's a hodgepodge, but it's at the Monster Garage Gym, it's a hodgepodge of lifters too. So for us anyway, it works really well. So there's not that one method that works, because they all have merit. I really believe that they do, and that's why so many people dabble in different kinds of training methods, because there's merit to all of them in some way, shape, or form.
And to follow up on that, Eric, you also believe that raw lifters need to train differently. Why is that, and how do you adjust their training?
Well, let's look at the bench press, for example. With a bench shirt, you're going to get a good amount of kinetic energy that's built up at the bottom of the lift, and you really need to stress the top part of the movement. With a raw lifter, they got to be strong at the bottom because there is no shirt, and they need to be strong at the top because that's where you butter your bread. That's your lockout. So it's just a little bit different. I think it's like the difference between playing the electric guitar and the acoustic guitar. They're both guitar, but you play them very differently because they're in essence two different instruments, but they're the same as well. Or you could look at that like, IndyCar versus drag racing. I mean, they're really going fast, but they're also almost different sports. Raw and equipped is almost a different sport, just because of and I've done both. Just because the demands it puts on your body they're just not the same. So again, like my earlier answer, I think there's not one tried and true training method, but just in general, a little bit more volume does the raw lifter. Just in my personal experience, it does a good benefit for them.
And finally, Eric, you have had some injuries that you've had to work around. How have you adjusted your training? What's the current state of your training?
Sure. Over the years I've had a number of of little minor injuries, but I've also had a couple of doozies. I had a bicep rupture, and you definitely have to train around not only the injury, but the amount of time it takes to heal. So there's the mental healing where you're ready to go again really quickly and jump back on the horse, but then there's that biological healing that you can't mess with that. Otherwise, you've got an injury on top of an injury, and you did it for a very little weight because you're really not even training yet. But I think just like you train for a competition, when you get an injury, you need to come up with a plan to train around that injury. Otherwise, you're just putzing around in the gym trying to find out what works. So right now I'm dealing with a little sacroiliac joint, which I was not even really familiar with until it got out of alignment. And that makes it difficult when you're squatting to go maximum weight with that kind of a tweak. So I've kind of methodically plotted out what is the plan to train around this. So that way when you are ready to train, you're as prepared as you can be, realizing that you've got to slowly climb back up in numbers because, in addition to just general weakness that you're going to get not training heavy, your tendons and your ligaments have not had that big load on them either. So your mind is willing to go, but you've got to remember that your body's got to be ready for that load too. So you've got to have a plan on how to train around the injury, and then when you come back, what is the plan to get back to your competitive numbers.